Are we witnessing the most impactful change in the contemporary era of Formula One? Max Verstappen, the four-time world champion who seemed irreplaceable at Red Bull, is now open to a transformation that could drastically alter the landscape from 2026 onwards. This is not mere speculation or paddock gossip. According to exclusive revelations from Sky Sports Italia, Verstappen himself has already signaled positively to Mercedes boss Toto Wolff, with only the start of official negotiations remaining. However, wait, because this story has much deeper layers than it initially appears. To truly understand what is going on, we must go back in time and understand how we got to this point. Red Bull, which has dominated Formula One in recent years with Max as its central figure, began to show its first signs of vulnerability in early 2024. Remember the controversy surrounding Christian Horner? That issue of misconduct that destabilized the entire Milton Keynes organization? It was precisely at that moment that Mercedes began to see an opportunity. Toto Wolff shows his cunning. He identified the instability at Red Bull, noticed the internal tensions, particularly the conflict of authority between Horner and Helmut Marko, and began to make moves behind the scenes. The Silver Arrow's interest in the Red Bull leader is not new. It is something that has been developing for over 12 months. And here lies the fascinating aspect. Wolff went so far as to publicly acknowledge that he would wait for Verstappen's decision for as long as necessary, even if it meant making other choices for 2025. Speaking of 2025, let's put into context the current situation that makes this change even more plausible. Max Verstappen, who in previous years was practically unbeatable, is experiencing a completely different reality this season. He is currently in third place in the Drivers' Championship, no less than 61 points behind leader Oscar Piastri of McLaren. 61 points. For someone accustomed to controlling races from start to finish, this must be a very difficult reality to accept. The decisive moment, symbolically speaking, occurred at the Austrian Grand Prix. Max abandoned the race after being hit on the first lap, and believe it or not, it was precisely by Andrea Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes. A coincidence of fate or a sign of the times? After this episode, Verstappen adopted a stance of practically giving up the fight for his fifth world title this year. For a competitor of his stature to admit this publicly means that something very significant is happening in his mindset. But the situation does not end there. The scenario becomes even more interesting when we examine the internal dynamics that are being proposed. If this negotiation progresses, and everything suggests that it will, Verstappen would not be taking just any seat at Mercedes. He would be specifically filling the position of George Russell, whose contract is expiring and, surprisingly, has not yet managed to establish a new agreement with the team. Russell, who has always been considered the future of Mercedes, may now be living his final moments as a Silver Arrow driver. And here comes a captivating element of the equation, Andrea Kimi Antonelli. The young Italian, who is a rookie in 2025, would remain on the team alongside the four-time world champion. Imagine the dynamic between an experienced driver like Verstappen, accustomed to being the absolute number one, working alongside a young talent who is just starting his career in Formula One. It would be a dynamic and potentially very fruitful combination for Mercedes. Now, let's take a look behind the scenes and the reactions that this information is provoking. During the Austrian Grand Prix weekend, both Russell and Wolff openly confirmed that Verstappen was in talks with the team about a possible move. They confirmed it. They did not deny it. They did not dismiss it. They confirmed that talks were underway. This is something absolutely unprecedented in the modern era of Formula One, where such negotiations usually take place behind the scenes, away from the spotlight. Red Bull, for its part, tried to downplay the situation by treating it as mere speculation. They protected themselves with the fact that Verstappen has a long-term contract valid until 2028. But here's the detail that changes everything. That contract apparently contains clauses that would allow for an early exit. Performance clauses, competitiveness clauses, we don't know exactly what the triggers are, but they exist. And considering Red Bull's current situation, it's quite likely that some of these conditions are already being met. Most revealing of all was Toto Wolff's latest statement on the subject. He not only confirmed the interest, but considered Max as a long-term alternative. Long-term. This indicates that Mercedes is not thinking of Verstappen as just a temporary solution or a marketing move. They are envisioning a lasting partnership, possibly defining the next few years of the German team. Now, let's analyze the possible scenarios and the consequences of this move. If Verstappen does sign with Mercedes for 2026, it would be the biggest change since Lewis Hamilton left McLaren to join the Silver Arrows in 2013. And note the irony, Hamilton won 6 of his 7 world titles with Mercedes. Is Verstappen looking for a more stable environment to continue his dominance in Formula One? For Red Bull, losing Verstappen would be a devastating blow, not just because of his talent, but because of all the symbolism it would represent. Max has been the face of the team since it started winning consistently. He is the driver who brought Milton Keynes back into the spotlight after years of absence. Losing him to a direct competitor would be an admission that something is fundamentally wrong with the team's internal structure. For Mercedes, on the other hand, it would be a return to the top of the hierarchy. Since Hamilton announced his retirement from Formula One, the Silver Arrows have been looking for a driver who could lead the team in the same way. Russell is talented, Antonelli shows great promise, but neither has the track record and experience of Verstappen. Having the 4-time world champion would be like having a guarantee of immediate competitiveness. And we cannot ignore the timing of this possible change. 2026 will mark the beginning of a new regulatory era in Formula One, with significant changes to the technical regulations. Historically, these changes always reorganize the order of forces on the grid. Mercedes may be betting that with Verstappen on board and the new rules, they will be able to return to dominating the category as they did between 2014 and 2020. But there are risks involved too. Verstappen is used to being the absolute #1 driver, with the entire team structure geared towards maximizing his performance. At Mercedes, he would have to share attention with Antonelli, a young driver whom the team clearly sees as a long-term bet. How would this dynamic work in practice? Would it be possible to keep both drivers happy and motivated? Another crucial aspect is the financial question. Verstappen is not only one of the best drivers on the grid, he is also one of the most expensive. His current salary at Red Bull is among the highest in the category. Mercedes would have to make a considerable investment not only in his salary, but also in all the restructuring that would be necessary to accommodate a driver of his caliber. And we cannot forget the impact this would have on the rest of the grid. If Verstappen leaves Red Bull, who would take his place? Sergio Pérez has already shown that he cannot compete at the same level. The team would have to look to the market, and there are not many drivers available with the talent needed to replace a 4-time world champion. Looking at the situation objectively, it seems that all the elements are lining up for this change to actually happen. Verstappen has already given the green light, Mercedes is setting the stage, and Red Bull appears to be more vulnerable than ever. The only thing missing is the approval of the Mercedes board, and considering the caliber of the driver in question, it is difficult to imagine that they would deny him such an opportunity. What makes it even more intriguing is how this move could affect the balance of power in Formula One. In recent years, we have had periods of absolute supremacy. First Mercedes with Hamilton, then Red Bull with Verstappen. If Max really does move to the Silver Arrows, would we be starting a new cycle of power concentration? Or would other teams take advantage of the instability to strengthen themselves? McLaren, the current championship leader with Piastri, would certainly be watching these moves very closely. Ferrari, always a title contender, could also benefit from any destabilization of the two powerhouses. And let's not forget Aston Martin, which has been investing heavily and could take advantage of this transition period to make a competitive leap forward. Ultimately, we are talking about a decision that could completely redefine the Formula One landscape for years to come. Verstappen at Mercedes represents much more than a simple driver change. It is a paradigm shift, a reorganization of forces within the paddock, a new chapter in the history of the category. The question that remains is, Is Max Verstappen really willing to give up the stability he has at Red Bull, even with all the internal problems, to embark on this new adventure at Mercedes? And more importantly, will the Silver Arrows be able to offer him the competitive environment he needs to continue fighting for world titles? What do you think about this possible change? Would Verstappen at Mercedes be the ideal move for both parties, or is there a risk that we are not aware of? Leave your opinions in the comments because this discussion is far from over. And since we're talking about big moves in the world of Formula One, click on the video appearing on your screen, because there I explain another situation that could completely shake up the category, and that no one is talking about.